Again, welcome everybody to ActiveRain University. My name is Bob Stewart. Today we're going to talk about how to find or how to make sure that people find your content beyond just posting your blog. So we always start off with kind of why are you going to spend the next 60 minutes with me? Might be a little bit less than that today, but we have this concept, and you know, I'm sure Chris is a really smart guy. He's behind the scenes here today. He's the first person I ever heard say this term. I don't know if he necessarily came up with it or invented it, but I'm going to give him credit for it. We want to make sure that when we're creating blog posts and we're creating content, and up until this point, we've been focusing a lot on SEO, right? In week 1, we talked about how to get our stuff to rank. In week 2, we talked about keyword phrases, like what are we going to make the title of our blog post. Last week, we talked about Google Author Authority. But what we want to make sure, because there are so many avenues today for you to be able to get a piece of content that you've created, and if you've spent the time creating that piece of content, we want to try to get it in front of as many people as possible. And what tends to happen, and what we see a lot, is instead of thinking after the content has been created, like what can I now do with it, most people position it based on our last couple of classes, which is to say they position it to write it, and then they just sit on their hands or they post and they pray that somebody's going to find it, right? That somebody's going to go to the search engine and do a search that will lead them to our content. And what we hope to make you realize today is don't do that, right? There are a lot of ways that you can take a piece of content and make it work for you. Right? Not just sitting back and hoping that it works, hoping that somebody finds it, hoping that I got that right keyword phrase. We can actually utilize our content and leverage it to enhance, to either go out and maybe find some new prospects for our business. We'll talk a little bit about that, but definitely to enhance the prospects, the leads, and the relationships that we have with the people already in our business. So we're going to spend the next 45 minutes here talking about what we can do once we create a piece of content to go beyond this idea that we just post it and pray that somebody finds it. So whenever we create a piece of content, we always kind of have these things in the back of our head, especially as it relates to, or when we think about taking something out and sharing it. Right? We want to become a trusted advisor. We want to share engaging things. We'll talk about something like the Facebook EdgeRank algorithm in a little bit that will really impress upon why we want to share things that people are actually interested in. We want to get our prospects off the fence, and sometimes we can find or create content that allows us to kind of say, hey guys, look, the real estate market's heating up, right? Inventories are low. There's things we can do to possibly get prospects off the fence. And then maybe we want to use real estate news to expose. I have on here find prospects, and I don't necessarily know that that's the right wording. The wording is probably we want to use real estate news to expose our business to potential prospects, right? To people that may not be familiar with us or know about us. So let's think for a minute about where do you find stuff worth sharing, because you know, not everything that we share, right? We're going to talk about Facebook and LinkedIn and maybe Twitter, I don't remember. But not everything that you share has to be something you wrote, right? That you could potentially be, and you guys see this all the time, and many of you probably do it. You could go out and find stuff that other people were creating, write an article in your local newspaper about real estate. You know, something from the National Association of Realtors, right? You can find other stuff. Where do you find it? Here's a couple of examples of places where you should probably be checking or at least thinking about in terms of news you can share. Now, in a second, there's going to kind of be this next step that you should take. So I've got the news, okay? So where do I find it, right? Local news outlets, right? That would be the Seattle Times for me or the San Jose Mercury News. National news outlets, right? We see stories in the national news outlets about real estate all the time. Again, we're going to talk about kind of what's that step after that that makes it applicable to people that I might be sharing it with. But there's absolutely never a shortage of news stories out there on the national news. The one I just read recently was that in the, I think it was under, home sales are down 10% in the under $250,000 range. They're up like 8% in the over $1 million range. And the article went on to talk about how the middle class is being squeezed and people at the lower ends aren't being able to afford housing. Right? That's a good national news story that I might be able to put a local spin on, and I'm kind of working towards that. How do we take these stories and make them of value for our business? How do we put our expertise around them? You know, other bloggers, man, you would have no shortage of good stuff if you were on ActiveRain reading every day, right? I would be thinking, if I'm a real estate agent, I'd be thinking about other people. Like, could I share something from an inspector that somebody in my sphere might benefit from? Could I share something from a loan officer that somebody in my sphere might benefit from? Could I share something from a home stager, right? There's all these other bloggers. They could be outside of ActiveRain. They could be inside of ActiveRain. We could be sharing our own research. We'll talk about that in a minute. I started here with Google Alerts. I didn't actually, those words didn't come out of my mouth, but let's finish with it. Here's some examples, right? And I know some folks on this call are doing this. I get, you know, I'll get something forwarded to me from an agent from time to time saying, hey, you know, this came up in my Google Alerts, and, you know, I was wondering about it. I had a question, I'm not sure why. So I know there's a lot of folks out there that are doing this, right? They're trying to keep up to date on the news, and they're trying to look for things that might be of value to share out there. So these are, you could probably think, you know, if you were in Seattle, you could probably think of 50 more Google Alerts, and you can set these things up at google.com/alerts. It's ridiculously easy, right? When you get to that page, if like my kid's 6, I'm absolutely convinced he can figure this out. You just go there, you type in the word that you want to be alerted about, you tell him how often to alert you, and then there's an option for like, do you want like just kind of the more popular stories or all the stories? You got to kind of play with that. Right? If you do all the stories in the first day, because you have it come to you once a day, it says there are 700 instances of Seattle real estate. Like, you probably want to dial it back to just the top stories. But it's really 3 or 4 little fields there, and you've got an alert set up. And for me, every morning, you know, I get my alerts on ActiveRain and on Trulia and on the things that I'm wanting to keep up to date on to make sure that I'm getting the news that I want. Okay. So now, well, let's say we find some information out there. We find a Google alert. It's a local story from the Seattle Times, or it's a national news article like the one I talked about where home sales are down in the lower price brackets and up in the higher price brackets. What do we do with that then? Well, when we're sharing it, we kind of have 2 options, right? We can reinforce it. We can say, hey, I thought this was really awesome information, and I think that you guys might be interested in it. Or we could disagree with it, right? We could say, look, there's this national news article out about home prices, you know, or home sales under $250,000 having really slowed down in the last year. That is not happening here, you know, in Vancouver, Washington. But there's a fundamental starting point, I believe, for reinforcing or disagreeing with data. There's an absolute place where you say, I have a piece of news and I want to either agree with it or disagree with it. I want to put my expertise around it. Because the people that the ways we're going to show you how you can share, right? And these are not groundbreaking, but we want you to really be thinking about this in terms of, if I'm going to share something, how do I convince the folks that might see it on the other end that I'm the real estate expert, that in their circle of people that they've chosen to connect with on social media, on Facebook, they've chosen to listen to on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever it is, how do I convince them that I'm the real estate person they should be listening to? And I believe that fundamental starting point is your blog. Like, really? Did he say that? Yeah, he said it. Obviously, I would say that, right? We're doing a blogging boot camp. So your fundamental starting point becomes your blog. I'll give you a couple examples of what I mean by that. So we do these things from time to time. infographics. We'll survey you guys, we'll poll you guys. You'll come back and give us some kind of an answer, and then we take those results and we make an infographic out of it. Sometimes we have some big research behind it and there's a big written blog post about it. That's no different than some reporter out there writing a story like I'm talking about where home sales are slower in the under $250,000 price range, right? The idea is you then take that and you make it local to you. So your blog becomes this place where you found this other piece of news. And by the way, guys, this is the origins of blogging. Okay, the origins of blogging was there was some other article out on the internet that the author wanted to share with the people reading their blog, and then they wanted to comment on it. Right? I wanted to take a few snippets out of there, quote the article that I'm talking about. I would link the person off to that article, but my blog post would become my opinion on what I'm about to share with you. Deb does an awesome job in here of taking the Real Estate is Back infographic we had last year and really making it relative to people in Clark County, right? Because, and she in this case agreed with it. It could have been that in Clark County real estate wasn't back and it wasn't going to be back. You know, in her opinion, or based on the numbers that she was seeing in her local market, because this was a national piece, right? We had surveyed people across the country. In this case, she decided to agree with it, but she put her own expertise around it. Rich used a report produced by the Greater Albuquerque Association of Realtors, and I didn't even have that as one of your potential news sources, one of the potential places you can find great content. If you have a real strong realtor association in your local market, they might be putting stuff out like little market updates and what's going on in Albuquerque. And Rich could very easily have taken that report and ran it off to Facebook and said, hey guys, here's what the Greater Albuquerque Association of Realtors thinks is going to happen. Would that have been more or less effective than him going out there, taking their stuff, putting his context around it, and then sharing it, right? This makes him look like an expert. Now, don't get me wrong, because we can't do this every time, right? And had Rich, man, business is on fire for him, and he does good, right? He doesn't have a ton of free time to be doing this. He makes the free time to put himself next to great real estate news and make it applicable to his local market, and then position himself as the expert next to that news. He could have just as easily shared the GAAR report. He could have put a link to that up on his Facebook wall, right? He took a little bit of extra time. He went in there. He really positioned himself as an expert. It's okay. You don't have to always do that, right? Sometimes you might just position yourself as somebody that's in the know in real estate in your area, somebody that knows where to find the great information to share with your sphere. It doesn't always have to be in the context of your blog. In a perfect world, it would be, though. Right? Sometimes it can get even beyond your blog. This started as a blog post, right? This finished as an article in her local newspaper. This is the last, maybe not the last, this is one of the most recent infographics we post, biggest home seller mistakes. Barbara Altieri took this post, made it applicable, like put her own expertise around it. So she took our content, put her own expertise around it, and ended up in her local paper. Right? And one of the reasons this did this, by the way, is because she didn't just post and pray. She didn't just put it online and then hope people found it. So once you have the blog post, right, once you have that thing worth sharing, you guys, and this, like I said with Rich, it didn't have to be a blog post you created. Right? In a perfect world, it is that. It could just be a great piece of news, right? But I would say, like, national real estate news means nothing to the person, in the subdivision down the street that you're trying to farm when they're getting ready to sell. It doesn't mean anything to them. It's I don't know, scintillating or something, right? Like it's it's something people enjoy because it touches on their sensibilities. Like, I don't know, why do people enjoy national real estate news? I guess it shows you trends and which way things are heading, but they want to know what's applicable to them locally, right? So if you you know, in a perfect world, again, I'll not just beat this into your head until you just, your ears are bleeding. Once you know, have the news, create something that frames you as the expert, the blog post, right? Okay, now once I have the blog post or the news, if we're going the easier route, right, what do I do with it? Well, I want to use it to get back to these things we talked about in the beginning. It was essentially to become somebody, to become the trusted advisor, right? To become that person in their sphere that they look to for real estate. Now, I want to share engaging content, and I want to make sure the stuff I'm sharing is getting in front of the people that want it or could potentially benefit from it, right? I might want to be trying to push people off the fence. I might be trying to use it to find new prospects, right? Or to create better relationships with existing people in my spheres or existing leads that I have, right? So we're not going to post and pray, right? We're going to get out there and actively utilize our content to get it in front of people. So we could send it in our newsletter. Joe, and I apologize, I think it's Manassa, Joe Manassa. I mean, Joe writes some of the best just local content I've ever seen. He takes the Tallahassee, he takes national news and he distills it down to what it means to people in Tallahassee. He takes, all the time you'll see him taking like numbers out of the MLS and distilling them down and putting them into, you know, putting context around it so that somebody in Tallahassee, like, I mean, if you are kind of lost by the idea of how to take real estate data or real estate news and make it applicable to you, Joe's last name is M-A-N-A-U-S-A, Joe Manassa. I mean, he writes some awesome stuff, but I know for a fact he sends that stuff out in his newsletter, right? He doesn't just sit on his hands and hope somebody finds these awesome blog posts that he's writing. He actively gets them in front of people that might be interested in it. By the way, and I've communicated with Joe via email a number of times, Joe's never once sent me a newsletter about the Tallahassee real estate market. I get emails from agents from all over the country all the time wanting to educate me about their real estate market. I unsubscribe if I can, right? He's sending it in his newsletter to his database of people in Tallahassee because they're going to appreciate what he's sending, right? He's not alienating. He's not filling up, you know, friends and family of his that aren't in Tallahassee. Right? He's focusing on people. He's sending his content out to people that will want it. If you just haphazardly send your newsletter out to everybody and anybody you've ever had an email exchange with, stop doing that. You know who you are. Reach out directly to hot prospects or to cold prospects. And so internet leads, like, you know, if I was sitting in front of you guys, I'd say, how many of you guys have, like, generate internet leads? How many of you guys generate leads through your website, and then you have a heck of a time ever getting a hold of that person, right? They never respond. They ignore your emails. Most of you, if you were all sitting in front of me, would have raised your hand at that point, right? It's a problem with internet leads. And we have all kinds, you know, if you have internet leads, you have all kinds of cold prospects, I bet, in your business, right? You probably have some hot ones too. And a hot prospect for me, right? I mean, the hottest prospect's the guy you picked up the phone on the first time and said, yeah, man, I was on your website. I love it. We're getting ready to move in a month. We're going to be down there next week. That's a hot prospect. I don't know how much I need to be sending this guy from my blog, right? But what about this person? What about the person that, you know, they registered on my website 6 months ago, and just recently they've been, every time I send out a property alert, they've been clicking on it and coming back to the website. And they keep looking at properties, and they've looked at, man, they've looked at 100 properties. Well, I can kind of see that they're looking at a lot of properties in one particular area of town. Maybe it's a subdivision that I've written about. would it make sense if I had a blog post about that subdivision to send that out to that hot prospect? What about that person that you know is in your database? They're a seller. They're going to be a seller sometime soon. You just don't know when. Right? They're kind of saying, well, we don't know. We're really waiting for, we just think the market's not quite to where, right? If your local realtor association just put out some news that said the market's smoking hot, right? Inventories are low, like it's a great time to be a seller in this market, and then you take that data and you put your own expertise around it, talk about how you've seen, in your office, listings are, man, they are making it past that first open house weekend. That's an article to send to reach out to your hot prospects with, right? Directly to them now. I'm talking like we're going to email them and say, hey, John, I know you and Cindy were thinking this time, at some point this year, you're going to be getting ready to list. I wanted to shoot you over this information from, it's from my blog, but it's based on an article that our local realtor association put out. Or it's based on an article that the Seattle Times published. You guys might have saw that article on the front page of the Times. Right? I put some of my own thoughts around it. I had the most, to me, it was an eye-opening experience. I was at a rebar. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Agent Rebar. It's a kind of an impromptu day-long conference where agents come together and they just talk about whatever, right? The sessions just pop up and people talk about whatever. And there was a session about blogging, and so I'm in there and I'm more listening to agents talk about how they're using their blogs. And one agent said, I was thinking about maybe, after I wrote a blog post about sending it out to to my email list or something. And I was sitting in the back and I was dumbfounded. I was like, you're not doing this? And and the discussion kind of moved pretty quickly to something else. And so I grabbed somebody who was in that discussion later, and this guy had been blogging on ActiveRain for a long time. He wrote really good stuff. I won't say his name, and I was just, I would have bet my house that he was sending his stuff out. And I said, hey, man, there was something that was said in that conversation earlier, and I said, you're taking the opportunity when you write like a piece of content that you think might be relevant to somebody that you know, like you send it to him, right? And he said, no, man, but that'd be a really good idea. And I was like, what? You don't? Like, it was, I don't know, I guess I just thought that when you have these prospects and people in your business, that you would take an opportunity to try to build a more meaningful relationship with them. So think about who are the prospects in your business. Think about, even right now, forget about creating your next great piece of content. Think about the content you have, and how can you utilize that one-on-one with either, leads, right? Even cold ones. Maybe they only looked at 2 houses on your website, and they haven't been on your website for many, many months. Right? The email becomes, hey guys, I don't know why you were originally on my website. You did look at 2 condos though. They were both under $300,000. Here's a couple of blog posts about a few buildings in the area that are in that price range that you guys might love. Send out a press release. Right? So if there was a national piece of news, and the first time we ever did a call like this one, and I was to say this, I believe the feedback I got from Chris, and I love his feedback because he's so insightful, was this is the point where a certain number of people on the call, their eyes just roll back in the back of their head, or they literally roll their eyes at me, and they go, I'm not really, send out a press release, like, give me a break. It's not that tough. And in fact, we've been trying to guide you guys towards getting better at doing this. So the next part of send out a press release is contact your local media. And we've got this thing that we've been putting together, and we've been kind of drawing outlines of good ways for you guys to approach local media. And that's, Barbara took advantage of that, and that's part of why she got that article we saw earlier published in her local paper. By the way, she is now at the point where she writes like monthly. She is a contributor to her local paper, and they even let her sometimes write about her listings. Like if she's got a real cool new listing in town, they'll let her do full-page features on her listings. That used to be something that agents like died to pay for, right? I get it, you guys. The print media is not as powerful as it was. I mean, that's almost laughable to have, for me to say that, right? But her stuff went online too, right? And just because I don't get the Seattle Times doesn't mean that I don't still read it online, right? So that content comes up there too. So contact local media. We walk you guys through how to do this, and if you're interested in it, but this would be a great, hey, you know, Johnny, the local reporter at the Seattle Times, you guys just published an article about home sales being down nationally, you know, under 250,000, about 8%. I think there was like it was under 100,000. They're down 18%, which means the low end of our economy and the people in the low end are even less able to afford a home. And then on the top end, you know, over $1 million, prices are up. But here in Seattle, that's not exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing something a little bit different. And I wrote this piece about it, and I thought you might be interested in it. Right? Maybe the piece just gets in there. Maybe the media person writes a story about your piece. Right? Maybe they cite you in the story. Maybe they quote you in the story. And remember last week, if you guys were here for last week, we talked about building up our Google Author Authority, and this stuff all kind of plays together, doesn't it? All right, we can take this content then and share it on social media. Now, the most impactful way to share our content on social media is to share our own content with great and compelling headlines. And I want to, Alicia's going to send you guys out a link right now. It's to a site called headlinehacks.com, and it's actually just a landing page, and it'll ask you for your email address, and do it, okay? The guy that wrote this, I very rarely get like email from him. He never spams me, but every once in a while he'll send me like something new that he's done or that he's written. But this Headline Hacks made me an infinitely better headline writer, especially as it relates to like the emails that we send out on a broad basis. So I take a lot of time. I don't do our daily drop, for instance, or some of the emails that we send out. I do our daily drop once a week. I do it on Mondays. And I take a lot of time to really think about what my headline is. Because for me, right, we've got a huge list of agents that we send our daily drop to. It's over 100,000. If I can get 1% difference in my open rate, that means 1,000 more people looked at my thing. But if you have a database for your newsletter, let's say that you're sending out to 500 people, for you, 1% is 5, right? Which might not seem like that much, but if 5 more people in your business today took the time to think about you, that would be good, right? If you got a 3% more open rate, that's 15 people, right? Like, so being able to move the needle on the headline that you use, and as we start to get in here and talk about sharing on social media, headlines become really, really important. So that headlinehacks.com, again, Alicia just sent you the link out. It might be the best PDF, the best kind of white paper that you would ever read about writing compelling headlines. Now, here's the problem with our blog, right, is we want it to rank in the search engine, so we think about writing a headline from the perspective of keywords and how could it rank. But when we share our content, we don't have to get locked into that same phrase that we used to try to rank in the search engines, right? When we share, let's say on Facebook, we can actually, and let me just show you real quick. Okay, we can actually make our headline whatever the heck we want. Now, you know when you send an email out, obviously you guys know you can make the headline whatever the heck you want. Right? But on Facebook and in some of these other places, you can actually change the headline. So let's just use this as an example, and I'll kind of go through this is something I would have learned in Headline Hacks, okay? So I'm going to take this post, and right now his title is Pictures or No Pictures. Like, you know, let's go in here and pull this in. And here's what happens. See all this stuff right here? It takes our title. Now, we were going to give it some kind of some context here, right? What you can do is you can eliminate that. We don't need that URL in there anymore. Let's get rid of that stuff. Right? It's pulled the content in for us already. So we're going to say something about this. Why taking great photos of your home is likely to get you more money when you sell. I don't know what his article's about, but then we can come in here and we can actually change what any of this stuff says. See that? You can make the headlines whatever you want. So if the headline of my blog post about the condo complex was Plaza del Sol condos in Capitol Hill, that's a crappy headline if I was going to share that with the people in Seattle that are my Facebook friends, right? A better headline would be, find out which condo building appreciated 12% last year. Find out which one of your neighbors is no longer upside down, right? Like, people will click on that, right? Find out why your neighbor made more money when they sold their house. But that's a headline. So the headline hacks, gosh, if you write a newsletter, if you send email, if you post on Facebook, if you do anything that's dependent on people seeing the headline and wanting to dive in, read that headline hacks. Yeah, this is it. It's really good. It's just a PDF. It's not actually a book, and it's free. Okay, so we can change, right, what these things say. And we can get rid of that URL here. So then our Facebook post becomes this nice, clean thing. Now, the next little piece for Facebook that's absolutely essential for you guys is to create lists. To create lists for your business. Let's see. How many of you guys, I have a poll right now coming out to you. So somewhere on your screen, you're going to see a poll, and it says, do you use lists on Facebook? Right? Okay, that's up. Well, it started out with 4% of you saying, huh, what's that? And now we're up to about 20% of you guys saying, huh, what's that? 50% of you, or 55% of you saying no, and only 20% of you guys saying yes, I use lists on Facebook. So 80% of you guys are absolutely crippling your ability to reach who you want to reach on Facebook. Let me show you what I mean. So, and I always kind of shiver at being on my own Facebook on a webinar like this, right? Because I have no idea what somebody's going to post on my wall or on their wall in my feed, right? Luckily, most of my people are very classy, like Ardell, a real estate broker in Seattle, right? She would never, oh, look at that. Oops. Okay, so I'm on my home area. Yeah, let's leave this. We don't need to post that today. And on the left-hand side, there is a little section called Friends. And if you've never created a list or never done anything with this section, Facebook has actually created a couple of lists probably for you already. Okay, and so I'm going to click More and kind of get into this section and see what's going on in here. And what you will probably see, if you've never created a list or done anything with lists on Facebook before, Facebook will actually create some geographic lists for you. For instance, Bellingham. That's a picture of me and my brothers when I was a little kid. My goodness. I have 19 people on this list. Facebook just created a list based on where my friends are at. And I don't know exactly why they create these lists. I think it's based on where you have large collections of friends. So I've got large collections like in Seattle or San Jose where I live, or Bellingham. San Jose is based on where I live. I have large collections of friends in Seattle and in Bellingham. Now this list, right, it's something that I can share with. Watch what I mean. When I come in here, and let's say I sell real estate in Bellingham, right? But I got friends all over. In fact, I grew up in Seattle, so I got a bunch of friends there. But I'm going to share this piece about the local Bellingham real estate market. And I only want to do it with the folks in Bellingham, right? It was this piece. You know, Bellingham neighborhood is on fire. Whatever. I'm going to come right down here. I can see all my lists. Bellingham happened to show up on there, right? I'm going to share it with just the people in Bellingham. I'm going to hit post. Right? That's only going to show to these 19 people that are on my list in Bellingham. Now, why is this important? This is important because of this thing called EdgeRank. And what EdgeRank is it's how likely is Facebook to show your content in the news feed of the people you're connected to. So let's say you had 1,000 friends on Facebook, okay, and you decided to share your article about Bellingham with all 1,000 of them, and only 50 of those people, let's say 100, we'll make the numbers nice and round, only 100 of them are actually in Bellingham. That would be 900 people, 90% of your list could have given a rip about what you shared. And most of those people aren't going to have interacted with it. They're not going to like it. They're not going to comment on it. They're not going to have done anything. And so at the end of the day, what you did is you essentially showed Facebook that these other 90% of the people, they didn't really care about what you posted. Let's say of the 100 that were in Bellingham, let's say 20 of them interacted with it in some way, either liked it or commented on it or shared it. Right? But that would have been 20 of 1,000. And you essentially degraded your EdgeRank or your ability to get content in front of other people for those other 900 people. Right? Had we just shared it with Bellingham, right, it only would have showed to 100 people, and then those 20 people that liked it, we would have positively impacted our ability to connect with them. Does that make sense? We don't want to alienate those other people because it hurts us for when we want to actually get content in front of them that makes sense for them. So one of the cool things about these geographic lists that they've set up for you is you can change them. And you can edit how big they are. So they default to set up as a radius of 10 miles. Well, I actually grew up in the town of Blaine. And Blaine is like 18 miles from Bellingham, which means my friends in Blaine who still live there aren't on this list. And so I need to expand this list out because Bellingham is really kind of Whatcom County. Right? I want to get everybody kind of in this Whatcom County area, right? All those people in that area would be, you know, they would be people that would be in a position to receive my real estate information, my great headlines, my blog content where I'm making the national news relevant to them locally. The people in this radius would be interested in that. And you notice now I get up to 30, right? Now I've got 30 people that when I choose my Bellingham list will be on it. Now, if you've never done a list, just go create a list. Super simple, right? Maybe I want to call this my past clients. And I always hear from people, oh, well, you know, I don't like to have my past clients on my Facebook. Why? Well, maybe I want to post a picture of myself out having a martini after work and I just don't feel comfortable. Okay, fine. Then set up a friends and family list or a list called people I feel comfortable sharing my martini pictures with. And then when you post, just post it to the people on that list. But when I post something about, how referrals, how when I post something about, like, let's say I post something from my accountant friend. My accountant friend blogs occasionally. I've convinced them to do it because I told them it was going to be great for their business. I told them I was going to share the stuff they blog about with people that I do business with. So my accountant wrote about, it's tax time, top 5 tax breaks for homeowners. And I take that from my accountant and I'm going to share it with my past clients because I've got them in a list on Facebook and it's really easy and it's really, really nice. I don't have to disturb my friends and family with that. Right? Lists are just a ridiculously invaluable way for you to create more affinity with people. And EdgeRank is your ability to have Facebook show your stuff. That first component of EdgeRank is your affinity score, which means how much does a person like what you do, like what you share? How often do they interact with it? And the more precise you can become in sharing content with people that are actually going to be interested in it, the better affinity you're going to build with those people, the better chance you'll have to get into their news feed. There is no mistake about why I see the people that I see in my news feed, right? It's my sister-in-law or my brother's girlfriend, whatever. Right? This is my cousin. Like, these are the people that I interact with the most. Katrina, she's a real estate agent. She's an ActiveRain member. I like her stuff. I commented on it from time to time. Right? There's a lot of people that never show up in here to me. Why? Because the first 3 times they ever posted something, had a chance to get in front of me, they posted it about, something totally that I just would not give a rip about. Their San Antonio real estate market stats, right? That would have been really good for people in San Antonio. It wasn't so good for me in Seattle. Use your list. Absolutely use your list. The first one you should get set up is maybe a friends and family. The next one would be like maybe my past clients or something. Find existing communities that may value your content. There are all kinds of groups and pages on Facebook, right? Maybe there's groups for your cities or for your counties. Don't spam them, right? But if you wrote something about, wow, guess what? We got to a point in the Bellingham real estate market where only 5% of our homes are now underwater. This is a huge turnaround from 3 years ago when 18% of our homes were underwater. Like, that's something of value to people that live in Bellingham or live in Whatcom County. Right? Go on, find groups. Just do a search. You give a search. Facebook's new search allows you to search for anything. They don't have groups? Create one. That's a whole nother class. LinkedIn is a great place to share professional content. If I was a real estate agent and I just didn't quite know how to use LinkedIn, here's how I'd use it. I'd create a group. Okay? I'd call it San Jose Professionals. I don't know. And then what I'd do is I'd go out and I'd invite an accountant to it. I'd invite an attorney to it. I'd invite a home stager, an inspector. I'd invite, anybody that I could think of, a dentist, a doctor, right, a pediatrician. Well, I'd invite professionals, people that I maybe did business with. Right? My BNI group, whatever. I'd get them online in a group, and then I'd control that group. And when I had a great piece of real estate content that I thought their clients might be interested in, I'd let them know about it. Right? I'd want my accountant to share with his people the fact that, home prices are up 8% in Bellingham this year. Right? Because my accountant might know somebody that's waiting to make a real estate investment. Right? My doctor might be somebody that's waiting to make a real estate investment. So think about, right, you want to share your content on LinkedIn, but think about how you can do it in a manner that's going to be valuable. Here's the thing about a group, right? If you create the group, you can control the group, which means you can email the group. I don't go on LinkedIn very often, but I'm a part of a couple of groups that are pretty active, and some of the few times I do go to LinkedIn, like in the course of a week, let's say, it's because one of my groups has driven me there. Right? Somebody in one of my groups has posted something that I'm like, when I see the headline as it comes into my email, I think that's something I want to read. We did a whole thing last week about Google+, right? But just remember, Google+ is allowing you, for the people you're connected to, you can manipulate their search results. If you're connected to somebody on Google+, if you have them in a circle and they have you back in a circle, you can actually manipulate their search results. Right? But we did a whole thing about why it's important to show Google we're an expert, an authority. And again, Anita, I used her as an example last week. She just does a really good job of, her getting her keywords in there. And but again, this is a place where maybe she takes an opportunity to look at that headline hacks and to make that top headline really pop. Right? And there's all sorts of that headline hacks goes into the psychology of why people click on things. Right? They fear they're missing out on something. Right? They don't want to be left behind. There's all these kind of psychologies, and so you can create headlines and get people to click based on them saying, oh my goodness, wait, there's a subdivision here in Kathleen that home prices are up 15% in? Like, I got to get in on this. Right? Or which one is it? Right? They'll click on it because they want to know, is it mine? With their fingers crossed. We talked about this last week too, right? Get that set up. Why? This is going to share my pretty little face. Here's the thing about Twitter. If you don't like it, don't use it. I think there's so much you can do in real estate. Like literally, if you hate the idea of social media, stop using it. Right? Don't force yourself to do something that you don't want to do or that you're not going to do consistently. We had the guys from City Blast on not too long ago, and I think what they talked about was really appropriate. Like, you can't just kind of half-ass in and out whenever you want. Maybe I do it sometimes. Oh, I'm not going to do it for a month. You have to like to do this. You have to want to. I guess you don't have to like to, but you have to want to do these things, right? If you don't want to, there's lots of ways to be successful in real estate. My friend Greg Dino told me the most successful agent in his market of Houston, all that person does is sit at the country club all day. They golf, and they have drinks afterwards with other people at the country club. They're a great agent. They do lots of business. Right? So I bring that all up in the context of Twitter because I think a lot of the agents I see, a lot of the follows I get from agents, they don't understand Twitter. They think of it as simply a broadcast medium. And if you think of Twitter as simply a broadcast medium, meaning, ooh, you can't wait to read headline hacks because you're going to put your next 50 tweets are all going to be about blog posts, and they're all going to have great headlines. Guess what? Nobody's ever going to listen to you on Twitter. It's not a broadcast medium. It's a social medium. It's a way to talk to people. So you should absolutely be sharing your stuff on Twitter, but don't be doing it just to be doing it. Right? Don't think, oh, well, I got to go through the check marks. I shared it on Twitter. If you never use Twitter for anything but broadcasting your message out, it's not valuable to you, and the 2 minutes it takes you are wasted 2 minutes. Right? Nobody's listening to you. If you're not having conversations, you're the guy that walks into the party and you're like, hey, guess what, everybody? Home prices are down 12%. Whatever. Right? Because you haven't built a relationship with anybody. Twitter's a whole different thing. Right? I don't say that, by the way, when we talk about Facebook, because most of you guys, people like it, right? If you're using Facebook, most people like it. But Twitter's one of these things where I think a lot of people go, oh, I just see a lot of agents that, their Twitter feed is just like links to their articles or their listings or whatever. I promise you nobody's clicking those. All right, now what? Well, find a piece of news and write about it. Right? Well, we have some action items, right, where I talk you through setting up a list on Facebook and Alicia's going to share those action items with you right now. But I really want you guys to think, and there's some things that I want you to do. Man, if you're writing a headline for anything, please, please, please read Headline Hacks. It might take you, an hour tonight. It's a really good article. Like the day I got done reading it, there's some exercises in it to help you become a better headline writer, and I'm doing the exercises, and I'm emailing Carrie and Chris, and I'm like, you guys have to read this. It's awesome. Now I'm sharing it with you, right? But find a piece of news and write about it, right? Because the whole idea becomes, how do we position ourselves as an expert? And then once we write something, don't just post and pray. Next week, we're going to make sure that our lead capture is in place. We're going to talk all about lead generation. Within our blog post, what do we need to be doing? And this is kind of the final piece of the puzzle. It's the last class in our boot camp series, class number 5. Make sure your lead capture is in place. Okay, Alicia right now is sending the link out. We'll hit you guys up again between now and next Thursday via email or featured posts on ActiveRain, or this is kind of that final piece. All right. In week 1, I learned how to get my stuff to rank. In week 2, I learned how to what to write about. In week 3, we talked about Google author authority and what are some of the things I can do to enhance my credibility with Google, enhance my rankings with Google. Today we talked about, okay, you got it posted out there, but don't just post it and pray. Don't just post it and walk away, right? Post it and then think about where can I leverage it in other places. And then next week we're going to talk about, okay, I've got this blog post. People are finding it now. How do I turn that into leads for my business? Okay. Let's take some questions. And I'm sure Chris, he's really good at behind the scenes. If you guys are asking questions like, wait, what did he say? What was that link? What was the URL? He's been answering those questions along the way. Check your chat area because Alicia has been sending out the links I've been talking about, the headlinehacks.com or the media team link or the homework or the action items link or the link for next week's class. Let's see. All right. Sorry, I'm bouncing around over here finding questions. Okay. Somebody says, where can I get these cool pictures you give us to use for free calls to action in our blog post? Oh, that's next week's class, man. Come on, what are you doing to me? Let's see here. I think they're on ActiveRain.trulia.com/bootcamp. I could be wrong. I don't know. Oh, I know. Blogging-blueprint? Is that where it is? Chris is probably like, just move on, do a different. Blogging-blueprint. It's at blogging-blueprint. I can't spell it. I can't type it. -blueprint. And if it's not here, maybe it's here. I don't know. I'll have to find that. It used to be on the bootcamp page, Brent. That'll be a part of next week's class, and it's actually in next week's action items as well. Carrie says, can I get the content for week 3? Everything that we've done up until this point, you guys, is located at the ActiveRain.trulia.com/bootcamp. So the live stuff is kind of here at the top. Okay, once we do the live thing, then the recording gets placed here. But down at the bottom here is kind of an explanation of each class and the recording. And then when you get to the recording page, I believe, that page then has the action items as well on it. So from ActiveRain.trulia.com/bootcamp is where you're going to find all the recordings, all the previous stuff from the past weeks. Yep, the Google class is there, Carrie. That would be class 3, this bonus class, Google Author Authority. Okay, the SEO class is how to get ranked, right? What to write about, Google Author Authority. This is today's class, right? By the end of the day today, the recording will be here. Diana says, I don't deal a lot with Twitter because it feels so different for holding a conversation than Facebook. What suggestions do you have for Twitter content? If you don't deal with it, don't do it. That's my suggestion. Twitter's one of these things, guys, where you have to, if you want to get value out of it, you have to put effort into it. And Twitter is about building relationships, and it becomes it's a way for you to talk to people, absolutely talk to people in your market and find commonalities but it's the people that are the best at Twitter, I envision them being really good at small talk. And they're the type of person that could walk into a cocktail party, because that's what Twitter is. It's a massive cocktail party on steroids. And they're the type of person that could, overhear somebody in the corner talking about something and gracefully insert themselves into the conversation in a manner that person becomes interested in them. And by the end of the conversation, right, they've built a relationship with that person. That's Twitter to me. Don't think about, like, if you don't get that part of it, don't try to force your content on there just to get your content on there. Like, literally just forget about it. Focus on Facebook. Just get better at using Facebook. Emma says, can you touch on an aggregate site that updates all of your social media sites with just one click? You can use things like Hootsuite. We had a company a couple weeks ago called City Blast that came and did something. They allow you to feed to 3 or 4 of the different social sites very quickly, and they will actually manage it for you. But like Hootsuite would be what I use. It's a really good, it's free. It's desktop based. You can get it on your phone. I can push stuff out to Facebook, to LinkedIn, to Twitter. Randy, you'll get emailed today's recordings. Okay, here's the deal. If you guys have any more questions for me, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to facebook.com/ActiveRain. I'll check in here throughout the day. Actually, you know what? I'm not answering questions here. You're going to have to go here. If you want a question answered, go to facebook.com/AR-Bob-Stewart. My new Facebook page. Ooh, hey, look at that. Like 35 of you guys that liked me while we were on this call. Thank you. I'll answer questions here today. All right. We'll see you guys next week where we're going to talk about generating leads, right? That's where the rubber meets the road. That's why we're doing this stuff. We want to get more leads for our business. On behalf of Alicia and Chris, who are always behind the scenes, I'm not mentioning Carrie. She's off vacationing in New York. My name is Bob Stewart, everybody. You guys have an awesome rest of your week, an awesome weekend in real estate. We'll see you again real soon. Thanks, Andy, at ActiveRain University. Bye-bye, everybody.